In March 2020, I was living at home alone for the first time in my life, which was a very strange experience. My husband was in hospital and I was visiting regularly with my family. We had our 50th wedding anniversary, which, to be honest, I, in the circumstances, didn't really want to celebrate. But I was persuaded by one of the excellent nurses in Woodlands View that that it was my memory too, and my daughter arranged a 50th birthday lunch because he was physically fit enough that we could actually go out. We could actually go out for lunch. It didn't mean a great deal to him, but it actually meant quite a lot to me to get the family together and to go out and have even a small celebration of 50 years of a very happy marriage. At first, COVID really didn't have much of an impact. When Jim was in hospital, there was very little said about it, and then it had been decided that he was going into a care home, and the hospital really wasn't saying a great deal apart from saying we might have to close visiting. It was all very kind of tentative at the beginning. It was discussed during March, it was discussed, the initial impacts were felt. There was the possibility that visiting hospital may be restricted or cancelled. Long-term care for my husband had been already decided, and I knew that was going to be the case. And at the end of the day, it was arranged very, very quickly, and he actually went into the care home. First care home, really, I'd visited others, and it was not a particularly pleasant experience, to be honest with you. The fear of COVID actually at the beginning, being an older person in my 70s, the fear of COVID was huge once we started to listen to the broadcasts, read the newspapers about what it could do, and it seemed to be a huge threat to older people, as it was, because older people were catching it and they were dying in their droves as it came to be. The lockdowns, all of the ones that happened, were harsh, and they were completely alien to people who were used to coming and going and doing their own thing. I'm a physically very fit person, but I was, like a lot of other people, I was really quite afraid if I went out, would I catch this thing? My daughter was very good. She helped with my shopping initially, bringing it in, not coming near me, etc, etc. And that was very bizarre because, as I say, I was living myself for the first time in 50 odd years since I'd left my parents' home. And here is my daughter. I wasn't able to give her a hug, I wasn't able to touch her. I got the shopping in, and there were lots of offers in Westcott Bride is a very caring community, and there were offers of help which I didn't need, I really didn't need. And eventually I said to my daughter, look, I've been on shopping myself, it's something that I like to do. I did it early in the morning when the queues weren't so big. Unfortunately before 10 o'clock you couldn't buy any wine, so I had to sort of time. I was actually heading to the checkout at after 10 o'clock. But there was lots of help offered, and I know that I tried to get out to walk as much as I possibly could. Because dealing with the situation at home, I actually felt, well, everybody's in this position, it's not just me, although I was living alone, but I felt, well, we're all very much isolated within our own homes, but going out walking and distancing ourselves from other people, it was very bizarre. You're speaking to people from the other side of the pavement. Jim was now in a care home which was close by, but I wasn't allowed to visit him. It was absolutely distressing. He didn't understand what was happening. I hadn't the opportunity to help him settle in, to help settle his distress. I wasn't able to see him at all, and he found it really hard, and he did suffer a lot from it. I got quite a lot of phone calls from the care home describing behaviour that was totally out of character, but also I knew it was because of his distress and lack of understanding. I think he just thought that we'd all abandoned him and left him, and he just could not take this on board, understandably enough. We were able to do video calls and phone calls, but he didn't really understand Zoom calls. He would just stare at the screen. I don't think he even recognised me at all, and that was very, very difficult. We settled into this strange life, listening to the First Minister's excellent broadcasts, listening to the instructions that we were given by Jason Leach, who I thought was such a great communicator. He was so clear and so reassuring in the way in which he spoke to people. But in spite of good health, I ended up suffering a stroke in December 2020. I was very fortunate. It was a slight stroke, and I made a good recovery from it. But it just did make everything that bit more difficult. Finally managed to get in to see Jim, and we wore masks and aprons and gloves and sat at the opposite side of the room. I don't know what he made of it. I certainly found it was really quite bad. But the cycles of lockdown and opening up tentatively, seeing my family was difficult. I do feel relationships were damaged during this because people did become more distant. Life has gradually stabilised. Visits with my husband are now much easier, although 3 years down the line his health has deteriorated quite considerably. But music is our main means of communication now. Has always been extremely important to both of us, and technology like phones and MP3 players and so on are just pretty wonderful. The world has changed a great deal, although the world is constantly changing. We have war in Ukraine, we have climate change, fire, floods, people suffering desperately, and recently with this, the earthquakes in Syria and Turkey, the suffering of the people there is immense. It's absolutely immense. And I do feel that the world has changed, as I say, very dramatically in the last 3 years. I feel in this country in particular, in the UK, I think the corruption that emerged during the pandemic has been not startling, understandable in some ways, but it is not being dealt with in the way in which it should be. But I feel that ordinary people, and I think this in light of the strikes that are being carried out, the industrial strikes that are being carried out, I think people have realised that they have to take things into their own hands and perhaps improve the society in which we live, because if we leave it to the politicians, it's not going to happen. I have already said this, but I feel we've all got to keep working to have a better world for future generations. That's the most important thing to me, is that my children, my grandchildren, hopefully future children will have a much better world to grow up in. And I still feel it's a large responsibility for my generation and subsequent generations to make sure that the world improves, is not gobbled up in the corporate greed that we have seen experienced in the last few years in particular. COVID and all the other things I've mentioned, I think, have built our resilience and strengthened ordinary people. There's a recognition, I hope, that fundamentals must change.